first of all, Casey, thank you so much for being a part of Expanding Our Roots. Thank you for being able to be a part of this project. I'm so excited and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And just to get this interview started, I wanted to just ask, where are you coming from? Where are you from?
Goodwood Boulevard, yo, right? I grew up on Goodwood and from Baton Rouge. Yeah, man, grew up in Goodwood, Sherwood Forest. I look at so much HUD data, and I know where I kind of like fell growing up. I was low middle class, right? Culturally, identify as Caucasian. Definitely was, raised as like a Southern male, even though, I just as much, I'm very effeminate and, but at the end of the day, in the 70s and the early 80s, if you were a dude, you played sports and like, that's what you did. And that's the way that I was raised. And all the way through high school, I was very sports oriented. And I grew up here the whole time, and when I was 17, definitely began my trajectory away from this city to find my own, and luckily landed in college at a liberal arts, very diverse, amazing experience at Loyola University, and opened my eyes to the rest of the world. Even though I got a nice little sneak peek, in my high school years with traveling, playing basketball and stuff like that. Yeah, the sheltered bubble came off once I moved to New Orleans. So
I've spoken to a lot of people who have moved from Baton Rouge to other parts of the country and the world. And what happens is that they end up kind of launching themselves from Baton Rouge and going on this voyage across the country and even the world, and ending up in all these exciting places. Did you have a chance to travel and live in other places other than New Orleans once you left Loyola?
Yeah, so I went to Loyola, and the day I graduated, I had a little 1-bedroom studio in off of Arabella in Magazine. Back in the days before it was Whole Foods, it was the bus depot, and it was loud, and it was a super cheap place to live. So I think I paid like $200 in rent or something ridiculous, and took everything out of my 1-bedroom studio, shoved it into a U-Haul, and just started driving west. Like, had no idea where I was going to go. And wound up landing in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It was gorgeous. And because I just wanted to originally I was going to go to law school for environmental justice. And I got into LSU, but I didn't get into UC Berkeley, which is where I wanted to go. And so I took a year off to write books. And that turned into 4 years of writing books and starting to work in the music industry. And about 2000, I moved back to New Orleans and launched my second music brand. And then once Hurricane Katrina hit, and everybody lost everything, and it was decimated, I went ahead again and packed everything up that I had left in a U-Haul, and I drove all the way to Los Angeles, and I moved to LA. Slept on the floor for a few months with everybody in my company. We all lived in a house and worked together, and then opened up offices over the next 5 years. I opened offices up in San Francisco and New York, and in New Orleans. We opened our office in New Orleans right after Katrina again, even though it was financially a disaster. We thought it was important. And I kind of began this nomadic life for like 6 years, just going from LA to SF, New York, New Orleans, and Baton Rouge, where my son is. So for the 2 weeks of the month that I had my son, we had joint custody. So I would be in Baton Rouge for 2 weeks. My kid was at the Baton Rouge International School, which I was really happy about. I was happy that he was there. And but as soon as I would drop him off to school, I'd hop on planes, and I just lived on planes doing that for about 6 years until he hit first grade. And then that's when I moved back to Baton Rouge full time in 2011.
Just to give you an idea of the intersection, I guess, with your life and mine, in 2011, I was in high school. And when I was in high school, I actually skipped a grade. So I ended up going from 10th to 12th grade in what I call my junior year, not my junior, senior year. And I hated school, and I hated living in Baton Rouge. And when I had the opportunity to leave after graduating from McKinley, I left. I went to the University of New Orleans. Then I did 3 years there and was only in Baton Rouge part-time. And then I moved from New Orleans to New England and went to the School of International Trade and Grad Institute. And for me, moving to New England, that was going to be my out. So once I moved to New England, I would never come back to Baton Rouge again. I would take whatever was in my whatever was in my studio apartment in New Hampshire and take that with me to the next place. That didn't end up happening. I ended up back at home. But one of the reasons why I was happy to be back home, or in the mindset of being back home, is, number one, I saw that, John Bell Edwards had got elected. And just to speak personally and not on behalf of A21, I was happy that, John Bell Edwards was elected. And then also I saw a lot of community organizations doing a lot of this very robust, transformative work. And the Walls Project was one of those organizations that even when I was far away in New England, I had saw were doing such amazing things in North Baton Rouge and in other parts of the community. Since you're the founder, since you are the man who started all of that, I want to know what gave you the idea to do the Walls Project, and also walk me through that journey of getting it to be the organization that we all see it to be now.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, man. Fascinating. So when you were living in New Orleans, I was just I kind of call it the Jordan retirement from the music industry. Like I kind of left on my terms, and the last club that I booked was Tipitina's, and that was like right when you got to New Orleans. So if you did go to shows at Tips, I was booking those in those years that you were there, and I'm very proud of the fact that of doing that work. But man, at that time, like I was 35. And I kind of felt like, I don't know, man, I think it's just everybody comes to it different, man. But a lot of times the procreators, the breeders, right? Like you start thinking about the world that you're going to leave for your spawn. And, it really, I don't know, man. I don't know what it was that hit me about it, but it made me completely disenchanted with working in music. I felt like everything that I was doing in the music industry felt very ethereal. It was cool because look, there's nothing, I love all art and I love our murals, but it doesn't even come close to the vibration that music does for me. Like I listen to anywhere from 8 to 9 hours of music every single day. Like all day, every day, a lot, and it literally, it's like a part of me, right? So I realized that just because I loved it, I didn't have to do it for a living. And so when I moved back to my hometown, I mean, dude, I wasn't going to start booking the Spanish Moon. I mean, I'd kind of elevated in my career at a certain point. Tips was even kind of small for me. And I didn't really want to do the Performing Arts Center and stuff like that. And I didn't want to book a casino. That felt like lame. And I was just like, okay, at 35, I was like, it's a young human's game. Like I'm going to gracefully bow out and I'm going to find something else to do. And so as I started, and I knew I had to move back home, I wasn't happy about it. I was actually quite pissed that I had to move back, and I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And living out in Los Angeles and San Francisco, man, you really learn about protest culture, man. I had friends in the Pico Institute. I watched 50,000 undocumented Mexican Americans like literally descend upon the city hall in Los Angeles, and like it blew my mind. I was like, these folks aren't even here legally, and they're putting themselves out there and like bringing the rage against the machine. Like that's courage, right? I observed a lot of culture clash out in Los Angeles, man, but dude, it just didn't feel anything like what I saw when I moved back to my hometown. And so when I first moved back, I grew up, my nickname in high school was Bird, man, because like I was the only white dude on the team all the time. And like Larry Bird at the time was like the only dude that anybody knew in the NBA. So they called me Bird. But like I grew up playing in Estruma's gym and Redemptress. That was primarily like where I played. And so that's the first play. I mean, it was my positive memory. So that's where I went to as soon as I came back. Went and parked at my grandma's house, which was, right behind Redemptress High School, and walked to the Krispy Kreme. And I looked around, I was like, what the hell happened to my grandma's neighborhood, man? Like, where are all the businesses? Like, they were like, well, Redemptress is about to close. Estruma was closed. And like, I just started driving around. I'm like, it looked like a bomb went off in North Baton Rouge, man. And like, look, I'm not saying that when I was 14, 15, and 16, I was as conscious of the socioeconomic and the systematic issues that from redlining and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't deaf and dumb to it. Every, 3 or 4 nights out of the week, we dropped, I played on the team. Warwick Dunn was on my basketball team, man, and he lived right behind the Boys and Girls Club on Winburn and Foster. And so, shit had changed like a lot and fast. And so I started just asking those questions because as a white male, right, like I could stroll into a space and say, I want to meet with the heads of whatever. And it's a small enough town where you could actually get a meeting. And I was very aware of my privilege because like it was taught to me when I moved to the West Coast. Like those concepts of how to hug men, right? Even when you're a straight man, like it's okay. You don't have to be worried about it, right? Like you need to kind of shift the way you don't like need to open doors for people. Like we're all equals. Like you need to kind of shift this and need to kind of shift this. My folks, like my circles out in California really kind of helped me understand like how many blind spots I really had. So when I came back here, that veil had been lifted. And so what I saw was very clear. And I kept having people tell me, in their blue button up shirts and khaki pants, they were like, we don't really talk about that. Like, right. Like that's okay for like a living room session, but we're in public and all that. I'm like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? So literally, man, just from the creative placemaking before it became a term, man, I mean, that's what you see in the Castro in San Francisco. You're in the Castro, man. It's like you look up at the walls, man. You look at the mural art, you're in East LA, right? When you're near the Watts Tower, dude, like, it's as clear as day, man. There's a vibration that's a cohesive cultural fabric, man. And murals is just one part of it. And so when we were walking around downtown one night, a bunch of friends after we went to go see John Waters perform at the Shaw Center, and I watched all these uptight cats, man, laughing at basically gay penis jokes, right? And I was just like, wow, I never would have thought people would have actually, and I was like, oh my God, they're just as freaky as people on the West Coast, but everybody's just all bunned up here because they're trying to keep appearances because it's good for business and there's politics. But I was like, they're cooler than they realize. They just need to like kind of have it come out. And that was it, man. We put together a group of 10 people. They were all entrepreneurs, absolutely no nonprofit experience whatsoever. And they were the 10 founders. It was like Maxine Crump from Dialogue on Race, Orhan Macmillan, this amazing guru dude, Derek Gordon from the Arts Council, who was there way before like even Eric was here, and he was incredible. And a handful of other entrepreneurs, man. I said, and we did a crowdsourced fundraising Kickstarter, and nobody had really heard of it here. And we raised the first money, and we painted three murals. That's all we were supposed to do. And then we were supposed to pass over the mural program to the Arts Council. And in that period of time, man, my mentor, Derek Gordon, passed away, dude. And so much momentum had built around the Be Our Walls project at that time. We didn't want to be like another culture candy, which really built up a really cool following and then kind of shuttered for a while. We didn't want to be like one of those flash in the pan things. And so we were like, well, shit, we got to figure out how to run a nonprofit. And it took a long time. Like, as a private sector person, it took me a long time to understand like the ethos of nonprofit, and it took me a really long time to actually understand the regulatory side of it. And it's complicated, man. And like I don't understand why it's as complicated as it is when you're trying to do good, but I guess it's because maybe there was a lot of charlatans for a long period of time that maybe didn't steward the money that they were given that well, and I guess it whatever. So that's actually how it kind of came to be. I mean, there's obviously, I'm going to skip everything to today because I will wear you out and I will wear out this time. But that's the origin story, man. There's a couple of things I'm leaving out of there because it's being recorded, but there was some cooler, more merry prankster kind of vibe of like the intention of the walls was supposed to be very much like this and was supposed to be very confrontational. And we wound up kind of easing off of that to learn how to build bridges as opposed to imploding things and bring the business sector into the creative sector as opposed to making it more of an adversarial relationship. And I'm glad that I listened to smarter people than me.
And it seems like it really paid off because the Walls Project has grown. As you said, I mean, you can skip the details because you have that right, but anyone who's been paying attention to the community can see how much the Walls Project has grown. I mean, pre-COVID, the Martin Luther King festivals were, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just want to know, how did you sustain all that growth? Like, how did you manage to keep up with something that you initially had planned to be a small project, and then it suddenly became something that was much more, magnanimous and transformative?
So the sarcastic answer is coffee, but the real answer is it's when we started working with teenagers in North Baton Rouge. Like no, this is no marketing pitch. Like that's when it all changed for me, right? Because like my two co-founders of the Futures Fund, which was the second program, like our mural arts program started in 2012. To this point, we've painted 125 murals, primarily in Baton Rouge, some in France, some in around the rest of the part of the state. We also, we just threw up one in Dallas, and right before COVID, because we did MLK Fest in Dallas at the same time we were doing MLK Fest here. But the Futures Fund was our second program, and that was 6 years ago. And my two co-founders were kind of like, they were the Harvard MBAs that went to teach for America, and then kind of wanted to do their own thing. And so they created this incredible model, and we lifted it off in a abandoned warehouse on Scenic and Gayosa. And then they left town, and they moved to San Francisco, into Boston, to get their PhD from Babson, and the other co-founder, development director for the Silicon Valley Foundation. Real legit. I mean, they were super smart people, and they put together a framework of a program that is like second to none, man. And like the first pilot of Southern Lab, man, like I would literally hang out in the back of the cafeteria and like not say anything, like at all. Like I had the mural pants on, but I was like, man, I'm not trained as a teacher. Like I'm like the only white dude here, and like, what do I have to, like, what does any of these kids want to hear come out of my mouth, man? I was just there to support, right? Like to support the vision of the Futures Fund. And when they left, once again, I didn't really have a choice to like sit in the background anymore. And the moment that I started like opening my mouth and listening, and then listening to all these young minds at Southern Lab in the coding and photography program, like everything shifted. Like everything about the work shifted, man, because I saw immediately the long game. Like I knew that in year 10 of the Futures Fund, we will have trained, anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 students from North Baton Rouge in skills that they're not even getting at Dunham, right? And I knew that all this big development was coming to Plank Road. And so in my head, I'm a student of the game on urban redevelopment. And I'm like, well, if you're going to make all these fancy storefronts, like who's opening the businesses? But more importantly, who's going to open the businesses and sustain them, right? So it's like, we looked at the futures. That's why it's called the Futures Fund. We ultimately see that as the new generation of young business entrepreneurs, community leaders that are from the neighborhoods that ultimately will be reinvested in. And, you can get into the whole conversation, call it gentrification, colonization, cultural, cultural gumbo, whatever the word, that's a whole separate conversation that I feel that is literally one of the most interesting conversations to have when you're talking about urban cities in America. Like, I think that everyone has so many different perspectives, and I find all of them fascinating and valid. And it's nobody's gotten it right yet. And there's a huge opportunity in Baton Rouge to do it. And I couldn't be more excited to be part of that, not leading it, but being in the middle of it, right? Like there's a difference. And that's really the position. Like that's when it all clicked, man. Once the Futures Fund hit, I was like, oh. So, Baton Rouge, another example. Mitchell literally, our Baton Rouge Community Farm, Mitchell graduated from Southern University's the Urban Forestry Master's Program, came to my office with a pencil sketch on a piece of paper like this. And he was like, hey man, I'm thinking I'd like to do like a community education farm. I'm like, sounds awesome. I used to work with him when he worked for Kia in Kip Holden's administration. I love Mitchell. He's one of the sweetest humans ever. And went to Breck, asked him if we can get some land at Breck Hollow Park, because they had just converted 188 acres away from a golf course. And I was like, do y'all have like 4 acres that we could use? They're like, 4. Yeah, no problem. And so, but at that point though, we had built a 6-year, a relationship with Breck since 2013. Like they were comfortable with us. And, so everything that's happened with Baton Rouge, man, that's Mitchell's vision. That's like, he plugged into our organization and used our organization as a vehicle. And MLK Fest, dude, we did not invent MLK Fest. MLK Festival, Martin Luther King Day, dude, has been happening for decades, dude. People have been doing service events around MLK Fest for decades. And they were doing it in Baton Rouge already, but that's the whole point. When we did the first one under the bridge, I identified on the news, there were like 18 little micro projects that were like a drop in the ocean. And so I started going around to Mid-City Redevelopment, City Year, Councilman Wicker, Councilman Marcel, Kip's office, everybody, and said, hey, how about we just all kind of bring it together and do like one big event? And they were like, well, we're not, I mean, like, that's not something that we can take on. I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out. And it's imperfectly perfect. It was like an experiment, right? Of, can everybody put their egos to the side and get the good work done? And I've learned more from the MLK Festival of Service. It's like 200 organizations and 5,000 people now volunteering in a really tiny little town. I mean, we're like a tertiary market. We're not Dallas with like 8 million people. The fact that 5,000 folks come out, show up, and like not only do the work, but actually celebrate together, and like the vibe of MLK Fest, damn, dude. I've learned so much from that process. So much. So that's you'd ask kind of like how we got from there to now. Dude, the mural program is like 1% of our organization at this point.
Even I have seen that the Walls Project and the Futures Fund have been intersected, but they've kind of more so diverged. And I see more of the Futures Fund come up than the Walls Project comes up, with the exception of the MLK Fest. And just to clarify for those who may be watching, Casey and I both know that the MLK Fest was not the genesis of Martin Luther King Day holiday celebrations. We're referring to the actual festival hosted by the Walls Project, just to be clear. But I did want to ask a question regarding what you said earlier, because I know you said that, sometimes people will look at what you're doing and they'll think, oh, well, white guy doing this in the hood, seems like gentrification, seems like, something, that this isn't necessarily vested in the community. What are some misconceptions that people may have with the work that you do, whether it be with the Walls Project or with the Futures Fund?
So the Walls Project is the 501c3 umbrella parent company, right? And so underneath that is our mural arts program, Futures Fund, Baton Rouge Community Farm, and then MLK Festival of Service, and our, we call it reactivate, blight remediation work. Everything's under the walls, and trust me, man, from a branding standpoint, it's been a nightmare, because like nobody can figure out that it's all together underneath it. That's the first misconception, right? Is that people think that the Walls projects are murals and they think the Futures Fund is something separate. It's actually all very intentional as one. What people also miss is that they seem to think that our programming is what the long game is, and it's not. The programming is the way that we build community trust. And when I say we, I'm using the royal we, which is a dangerous thing because I'm trying, but right now, while I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking for 12 full-time staff members and 150 contractors every month, right? So that's people who are like literally working on this every single month, on top of the volunteers, our board directors, our sponsors, and all that. The reason why people are behind the walls is because nothing that we're doing is actually about the walls. Like, it's all these like massive coalitions that are based around a HUD study from 1978 called the 8 Hypotheses of Poverty that they did with UC Berkeley. And those 8 hypotheses of poverty address the systematic issues that keep people from social mobility and living the life they want to live. And so what we quickly realized with the Walls Project was that even if we were like the best freaking mural program in America, which we're not, because that's the Philadelphia Mural Arts Program. They are the granddaddy, all respect goes to them. And they shared all their best practices with us, right? So did the New Orleans Arts Council and stuff. It's a very, we didn't invent murals. Like, we're not trying to be the biggest and baddest. The Futures Fund, even if we worked with 10,000 youth across America every single year, we would still not be able to make a dent in the bucket of systematic oppression that has been inflicted inside of our country on African-American and Latinx students in America, specifically in the Deep South. And no matter how big MLK Fest got, it's freaking 4 days out of the year. 4 days. And even though we were doing quarterly cleanups, that's only 16 days out of 365 that we're out there cleaning up trash, planting trees, painting buildings, getting rid of blight. It's got to be 365 days. And so very early on, as I divulged to you, I have a 10-year succession plan, and I got my succession plan working with Raymond Jetson when he was at Star Hill Church. So the intention of the Walls Project, a lot of times people think the walls is about me and like I'm the walls. I was the reason why people associate the walls with me is because I was willing to be the one when it looked like it was going to fail, I was comfortable in that space to be the public face, just like how you are with 821. At the end of the day, man, it's like if you threw an event and nobody came, guess who it looks bad on? You, nobody else, right? And you were willing to be comfortable in that space and put yourself out there, embrace vulnerability for doing something different. We had no idea if any of this stuff was going to work, but I was comfortable with failure, right? But we are building a organization for new leadership to come in. And the more, if you look at the people who we've been hiring over the last 3 years, now that we can actually hire people and not everybody's a volunteer, they're from the neighborhoods where we work in, right? And, and again, like you said, there's a lot of pushback. Trust me. When I walk up and down Gus Young Avenue by myself at 5:30 at night on a Thursday afternoon, getting the final signatures for people to let us paint buildings on the building murals on the buildings. Trust me, man, I have a wide range and very diversified conversations on the street of Gus Young, Scenic, Plank Road, Winburn by myself, right? But it's like, if you're not willing to have those conversations and navigate those and engage with the people who you're working with in the community, then you have absolutely no business doing the work and you're nothing but a voyeur, right? At the end of the day, man, this organization is going to be led by a new generation of human beings in Baton Rouge and the 10 parish area that represent everybody who we work with. Like if you look at the box and you see who's on our board, who's on our staff, and you look at race, age, sexual identity, all the different boxes, right? And you look at how we were 6 years ago compared to where we are now, it's literally night and day, but that was in the DNA of the roadmap. So, and then, I've had a couple of younger people pop off to me and they're just like, man, you're not from this neighborhood. Like, what are you doing here? I was like, with all due respect, I was literally playing ball in this neighborhood well before even your oldest siblings were born. Like, we're all from here, by the way. I was like, this was the city. Nobody went out. The only people that went out on Highland Road out past Bluebonnet is if you lived in Gardere. Like, no, there was nothing out there, right? And it's like, this was the center point of the city, but I understand your intention. I get you, all good, no problem. We don't have to all get along together. But it's like, our headquarters are moving to, COVID pushed it back, but we're opening our headquarters on the corner of Winburn and Acadian in an 8,000 square foot innovation and equity incubator that I've been working on for 4 years. And our farm is on Winburn Avenue. We're on Southern University's campus every Saturday for 6 years, in every building on Southern's campus that has a computer lab at BRCC Mid-City. Like, at some point, it's just like, am I an outsider or am I actually part of your community? Because the last time I checked, I didn't see you picking up trash outside of Hope Ministries. I have been, right? But I'm never confrontational with that interaction because it's disrespectful, and I hold my tongue because I am sarcastic. But the reality is, man, when someone's throwing that shade at me, their voice is being heard. And that's really all people want. They want their voice to be heard. They don't want to be invisible in their own neighborhood. So when we did an installation on Winburn at an abandoned lot where we went from airline all the way to Plank and picked up all the rubber tires. They're just stacked everywhere. Dude, I don't know if you've moved a lot of rubber tires that are full of water, that are mosquito watered, and loaded them into a Ryder truck. But we did about 16 or 17 carloads of them and created a prayer labyrinth, right? Painted them, planted trees and not trees, bushes, spices and stuff like that, and created this cool prayer labyrinth. And the artist put God's plan on it. Dude, we got so much community pushback on that, so many community pushback. And do you know what we did? We literally showed up with DPW and we scooped it all up and it was gone. Why would we keep it there? I'm not trying to make a point. The Estruma Alumni Association, really, to be honest, Dr. Mims is the one who I listened to the moment she called me, because I used to play basketball with her son and she went on road trips with us. So when she told that to me, my answer to her was, yes, ma'am. I was like, yes, ma'am, we'll take that away right away. And that's it, man. I mean, like when when you do public art, you work in the community, dude, like their voice is going to be heard. So, you don't get to create in a vacuum. So I obviously was very passionate about that answer. So sorry for the long-winded
Yeah, yeah, I felt some of that, but you know what? It's okay. It's cool. I think people need to know that, you could have an opinion, but your opinions also impact people positively and negatively. So, that's why you should always be mindful of what you say, because you don't know what people are going through. You don't know how people are getting what they get and got what they got. And you also just don't know what people have gone through. I mean, with 821, I've heard a lot of people, say things that I have considered to be very hurtful, either to diminish my work. I think people don't understand that, some of the people that have critiqued me, I remember one person said, it seems like all y'all do is just talk, referencing the dialogue, heavy stuff that we do. And I think that, my pushback to that would be to say, no, my work is building community. We live in a very divided city and a very divided region as far as Southeast Louisiana is concerned. There are people who don't even talk to each other unless it's transactional. So they have people talk to each other and build relationships. I mean, we have, pre-pandemic, we had dialogues where we would have African American, Arab American, Latinx, Asian, white, people that were in their teenage years, people that were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s in the same room together. No, I don't really know of a lot of other organizations who are doing that work like consistently and doing it in a way that doesn't feel tokenistic. All I'm doing is me, along with my team and the community who supports me, are trying to create authentic spaces that build community, get people to think differently about the world they live in their community, and also get people to understand that you don't live in the world by yourself. My mom would always tell me that you don't live in the world by yourself. And I think that, it's just important that people understand that everybody's work is intentional. Everybody's work in this community is seeking to do something better for their community. So unless someone is actively trying to harm or take power, economic or political power, away from your community, just show people a little bit of grace. The final kind of sort of questions I want to ask, one is in reference to the future, because based on what I'm hearing, this whole manifestation of the Walls Futures Fund, project has almost lasted a decade, and now we're into a whole new decade, and you keep growing and growing and growing. But I'm also hearing that you have much bigger plans for both the Walls Project and the Futures Fund intersection. So what is something that you'd like to accomplish in the future that you have not already done? And also, when are you going to work with 821? Because I am seeing a lot of intersections between 821 and the Walls Project in my very creative, crazy mind with, what is that?
The only note that I just wrote was invite Jahi to Fridays, to all the coalition work. I'm about to crush your email. What I'm looking to accomplish and how to work with 821. In the last 12 months, we have built the One Roots Coalition on Fridays. So for the last 41 weeks, every Friday in Zoom, we invite hundreds of community leaders. Some of them run organizations, some from the mayor's office, some from foundations, some people I like to call armies of one, like Reverend Alexis Anderson. And they show up on Fridays at 8:30 for 1 hour. And those 9 drivers of poverty that I was talking about with you, we are creating coalitions around every single one of those. Or if coalitions already exist, then we're joining onto it. But like last week, we had 88 people on a Friday morning, fully engaged, like it's a fully engaging experience. And not one time in those 41 weeks has the topic been, this is the Walls program. Not one. It's about equal pay for women. It's about food insecurity. It's about health equity. It's about the fact that, about redlining and people, paying over 50% of their monthly wages to rent. It's about the fact that 1 in 4 children in our city go hungry. There's all those 8 hypotheses of HUD that we started with is now we have adopted the framework of the 9 drivers of poverty. And so the Walls Project will continue to do our public art. We will continue to do the Futures Fund, Baton Rouge, and MLK Fest. However, MLK Fest is a perfect example. we have been courting, the old word is courting, correct? We have been courting several organizations from North Baton Rouge to take the lead on MLK Fest. We will stay engaged and just run the backbone of it. And so our partnership with Metromorphosis, we have shared staff with them. We write a lot of grants together, and like we manage coalition work together. We do the same thing with United Way. We do the same thing with Nexus. We do the same thing with a lot of organizations. It's now more about this coalition work around systematic issues to connect funders with practitioners, with data and evaluation organizations, and then of course the policy people, all in a continuum, and allowing local voices who are already doing that work to lead those coalitions. And we just send out the meeting notes, and just recruit more people into the coalition. And that's really what the future is going to be looking like a tangible thing that I want to see before I finish my work in the Walls Project at whatever date that is in the future. I want every single human being in this city that goes to sleep hungry fed. We know how to grow food. We know how to distribute food. So we have to just admit to ourselves that some people, we simply don't give a shit about them. Because if you're going to bed fed and other people are going to bed hungry multiple nights every week, then that means that you simply don't care enough to do something about it. And once I learned more about the food insecurity issues around with the Baton Rouge farm and hanging out with a bunch of urban ag and sustainability people, and really understood that I always thought I couldn't grow food. It's the easiest thing in the world. Like, it's literally the easiest thing in the world. We live in some of the richest soil in America. You put something in the ground and you water it and you tend to it and you have food. And I said, and so teaching that art form and creating new, decentralized food systems, and not just relying on food banks and DSNAP and all that kind of stuff, and actually leveraging federal dollars with local dollars and creating a decentralized food system. That's what we're doing, and so that's like one of the big goals that, we want to accomplish. But that's really what the future of the Walls Project is that you'll see the final blitzkrieg for the next 18 months with our logo. That triangle will be freaking everywhere, because until our 10th anniversary, right in June of 2022, we are going to do everything that we can to start bringing more resources from national and global funders into this city, and resources into this 10 parish region, not through the walls, but literally through our coalitions that we're working in, to put more resources on the ground and more people work together. And then our logo is just going to slowly start fading to the background. And I said, and we're just going to hold our position in the middle, right? And just refuse to stop. Refuse to stop until the systems and the policy. There is so much bad policy, and I feel like you are someone who actually understands that. And I said, and how it limits people being able to get the resources that they are literally entitled to. I know people don't like the word entitled, but it actually is literally what tax dollars are going towards. It is literally where the dollars are supposed to go. And until that is done, then the mission is not done. And 821, all of it. And the one thing I can tell you, any of your detractors, and I learned this from Maxine, so I want to give reference to where it is, talk is action. Dude, if you can't, our mantra for the next 10 years, enlight, unite, ignite. Enlight, unite, ignite. You cannot enlight if you can't even speak with each other. If you're using different definitions for the same word, how in the world can you work together? Right? And that intergenerational cultural competence that you are fostering is invaluable. It is like a lost art form in our world, along with discernment, clearly. So yeah, man, it's I'll work with you in all ways. Honestly, I thought you had left. I thought your job had brought you to another place. We're not all seeing each other. It's like a global pandemic. I'm seriously quarantined. I don't mess around. But with that being said, I'll invite you to literally everything I'm doing, and you can make the decision on what you want to come to. In any place that you see the space to emerge as a leader on a particular topic in a particular initiative, you will have all the room in the world. Trust me, we love people with good ideas that actually like to do them.
Well, that sounds like a plan. And also, thank you so much for the compliment. I really, really appreciate that. I do want to make two quick notes before I wrap everything up. So I know there's a similarity between the 821 project's name and the Walls project's name.
Yeah.
So the Walls project came before 821, but 821's name comes from a very different place than the Walls project. In fact,
It does.
I actually thought of 821's name will look like in a very, very different context, actually to pay homage to my upbringing in North Baton Rouge, as that place of like about global connectedness and cultural diversity and appreciation of Blackness, all these different things that I felt made me feel empowered to live in this world. That's where 821 comes from. And to, kind of piggyback on what Maxine Crump said, the whole talk is action thing gave me a lot of ammunition to talk about 821's work, because dialogue on race creates transformative change off of dialogue. And granted, you have to read and engage in a very academic way, but dialogue is the foundation of that organization, and it's making things happen. So, of course, there are always going to be haters, but we don't do the work for the haters. We do the work for the people. We do the work to get people the resources that they need. And that's how it is. Actually, I interviewed somebody recently who corrected me when I said we're giving people things. And she was telling me, no, actually, this is, from an organization out of New Orleans. She said, you get people things. You don't give them anything. You get it to them. We are in this together. So no organization has power or autonomy over anything. I know we are really, really running out of time, but I have one last question to ask you. I know you've done music, all these different things. I'm sure you've had plenty of jobs before, and in every job interview, probably news interviews, you've left feeling like, dang, I should have said this. Man, I should have said this. What is one thing that you'd like to say that you haven't had a chance to say during the course of this interview, or more so, what is something that you'd like to close the interview out on?
The human species needs to prepare to become interplanetary. I am part of a movement to get us ready to leave the planet. Out of necessity, at some point an asteroid is going to plow into our planet, and it is going to happen. And we'll either go extinct or we will continue to propagate and keep pushing forward. So if you want to know what my catalyst of doing community-based work is, if we can't get it right here, can you imagine the complete disaster that Mars is going to be in 2033 when NASA lands there, right? And so that's literally what my overarching intention of all of this is. There is no end game. Like everything that I'm working on, I am fully realized that there's a strong possibility I won't see the end point of it in my lifetime. And that is that's not a depressing thought. That's a releasing thought, right? We are part of a continuum of work that has preceded us for centuries. And it's an honor to be able to do this work, not because of the recognition, but because of the fact that we get to do work that's outside of self. I've done the work where it's all about self, and making money isn't actually that hard. Doing this kind of work almost feels impossible sometimes, as I know that you know, right? And so the name of your organization, 821 Project, I have no idea if you take yours at all. Like, it sounds like to me it's more reverent. Just so you know, the Walls Project is actually a total sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek. Like, it's a metaphor. Like, everybody just assumes that it's because of the murals on the walls, which is exactly why it was easy for people to understand what we were doing at first. But it actually really speaks to the fact that there are actually no real walls between us, only the ones that we construct. And make no mistake about it, systematically, they are very much there. They're very much there. And people that don't see them are the people on the other side of the wall of privilege.
Well, I don't want to take that powerful, powerful thought, so I'm just going to leave it there because and let it sit and linger. But yeah, Casey, so much. Thank you. Oh my God, I can't talk today. Thank you so much for participating in this interview, and again being a part of expanding our roots. I just realized that this is the first full conversation I've had with you, and that was more than 10 minutes in about 4 years. So yes, this is also a very historic day. So
this is a, as they say, every day is the future. right? And so today is the beginning of our new future together. And maybe actually, Jahi, outside the lines of the interview, maybe we weren't meant to work together until now. Maybe, right? Maybe if anything, I'll own it. Maybe I wasn't ready to work with you yet. And now I've got my chops. I'm ready to go. So I'm going to make good on my promise to you. You have my email, you have my cell phone. There is no reason that we cannot deepen our work together. And I thank you for this opportunity to be part of the Expanding Our Roots. And I will go and check out the other interviews to learn. And I look forward to contributing to everything that you're working on, however I can. So I appreciate you.
Yes, well, I definitely will take you at your word. And again, thank you so much.